all are entitled to a safe, comfortable space on campus. We can make this campus inclusive, supportive, comfortable for all students because we believe that every student, we have the same intrinsic value that are invaluable. Thank you.
That was looking forward to have more time as the trivia was cancelled, so we will take more questions. Yes, I will go back to you.
I just have a question about well, specifically I got this idea from George in reducing the fund prices to the Fox and Crow. But more directly, I'd like to talk about the budget of the Fox and Crow and how it's been losing money every single year out of student fees since student union budgets have been released since 2012. We've been losing tens of thousands of dollars every single year. And I would like to know how presidents will have direct involvement on fixing this issue in the future.
Thank you for the question. I come here, as you know, a lot, asking for hot water, not to eat too much, because to me, I feel like the price is too high for me. I cannot afford it, and I believe this is the same for many students. Now, I know that right now we're losing money. Pause in 10 seconds. Here's the logic: if I don't make it lose more, I'm winning. If I keep it tight, I'm not losing. By reducing price, I'm aiming to bring more community members, more students come here, and I'm sure that there's a balance that we can improve
Your time's up.
through reducing the price. Thank you.
Question from the audience? You will be next.
This question, I am a moderator, but I'm also part of the student body, so I think I'm okay to ask your question. So this one is for George specifically. So offering business students the opportunity to run the Fox and Crow is an innovative idea, as you've talked about. However, how do you plan to manage potential risks and challenges that could arise from students managing a commercial identity?
Thanks for the question. This one of my priorities. So, of course, we're going to keep the management of our Fox and Crow. They are professional managers. We're having them to oversee the whole process by letting business students to run this place. I'm creating this place as a lab, for business students. I'm sure they're capable of implementing different ways, try to make this place better. Now, there's a part of the question I want to answer. I forgot which part.
Your time's out.
I'll get back to that.
Had a question here in the back.
Hi, my question is for Divya. So, in the statement made previously by Ibra, when he talks about it not necessary or it not being necessary to have sex toy bingo, there was a conflation between it not being necessary and him not prioritizing consent. So, since you worked as VPSL, do you think it would not be more effective for you to have maybe educational workshops, peer support, or something that's a little bit more direct as opposed to just sex toy bingo?
The walking really gives time to thank our candidates.
Thank you so much for that question. I will be completely honest, I did have a consent week that was workshops with educational stuff. It did not work out at all. There was zero attendance. However, after that, I have been trying to think of more creative ideas. And what I do recommend maybe for the next VPSL or for anything that is going to come up, whatever heavy subjects are being talked about, to just have some other chill activities such as painting or coloring, just so these conversations can happen more comfortably. Thank you.
Hi guys, this is a question for anyone that wants it. So something I've heard recently is that there's an air of distrust or not poor understanding of what exactly the student union can do and distrust of people within the student union specifically. So I know that some of you have been in the student union before and others of you haven't. So I just kind of want your thoughts on this of how do you aim to bring trust and understanding for students back to the student union?
Ibra, would you like to answer the question first?
Just one word, transparency. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you for that question. In my point of view, I think when it comes to transparency side of things, there is open SU. So if you do want council reports and stuff, everything is online, and I believe it is advertised on our stories as well. However, I will point back to what I said earlier. I think it will also come down to councillors being able to communicate with their constituents so that they know what we do and what the SU is capable of doing. And I guess that would be where I would try to build more trust. Thank you.
So, like Ibra, I believe in transparency. So, if I'm elected as a student union president, I'll make sure that there's weekly, every week, we're gonna send out emails telling you what we have done last week. So I believe if you know what we're doing, you're more willing to trust us. So if you're not, and don't have time to go on the website to check everything out, we're gonna bring that to you. So we're gonna communicate more effectively, more often, so that you know every single week what we are up to. Thank you.
Thank you. Because one of our candidates needs to go to an exam, we'll be wrapping a question, and we will take a last question from the audience. There was a man in the back, very eager to ask a question this entire time.
Hey, the question to George. So first of all, it's not really a matter of how many people you bring to the Fox and Crow. It's a very simple math. If the price is higher than the profit, it does not matter if you bring 10 people or 1,000,000 people, the loss will just get bigger. And isn't it contradictory to say that you stand for students when you don't take in consideration that the workers of the Fox and Crow are also students that count on the tips, which are based on the price of the products, in order to pay rent, food, and etc.?
Real tough question, really tough. Again, the details, how to make it work, I can with confidence tell you right now how we're gonna look. 10 seconds. The staffs. I'm sorry. Great question. I gotta think about more. Thank you.
One of our candidates has to leave right now. We will be wrapping up presidential debate. Thank you so much, guys, for having us.
Thank you. Great. Thank you.
Next, we will move to the VP candidate. So I'll just remind how it's going to go. So each candidate is given 1 minute to introduce himself. 3 general questions are asked. Each candidate has 1 minute to answer, and each candidate has 30 seconds to answer a question from another candidate. We will start with Vice President Academic Debate, because we have one candidate for this position. So, for those who doesn't know, Noah has already been in the position for the past year. So we prepared special questions for him that combine his experience as a Vice President Academic with some of his promises in his campaign. So he will be only getting 4 questions instead of more. Alright, Noah, you can introduce yourself.
Hi everybody, I'm Noah. I don't know if you know me. I'm the current. Hey, let's go. Woo! I'm the current VP Academic and External Affairs, UPEISU meeting. I'm currently running for VP Academic. After I led the charge to cut the position in 2 because VP Academic and External is actually a lot. So we're just going to cut it in half. I'm going to run for the nice quiet academic side. I'm going to leave the province and go to the conferences bit for the other folks. Really happy to be here. Really honored that I'm running unopposed. Really want to represent you guys right here, and hopefully you guys like what I've done so far. Thank you.
Okay, first question for Noah. Lowering the price of parking passes and designating a free parking lot for students are significant promises. How do you intend to negotiate these changes with the university administration, given the financial implications?
So, we are currently making an amount of strides on this. I am skeptical that we're going to get to where I want it to be, but I'm really hoping that we can get somewhere. So, students came to me a few months ago saying parking was a major issue. I was like, okay, I'm with you, parking is a major issue. So we made a parking survey, we sent out the parking survey. I delivered that parking survey to the Vice President of Finance Administration, UPEI. She said, let's make a parking committee. I said, yep, we're going to do it. We got 2 student representatives in the parking committee. So the way we're going to do this is by using those representatives through the parking committee to lobby for better conditions for students for parking, particularly because we really need parking, guys. It's a mess, and I'm trying my best, I promise. We're going to get there.
Thank you for your speedy answer, Noah. We're going to move on really quick. Second question. You mentioned that improving international student representation on UPEI Senate was one of your accomplishments. Can you share more about what this entailed and how you plan to continue this work?
Yeah, so currently, at the start of the year, we had 6 student senators. And none of those senators was a designated international student position. And I think that's really bad, because international students represent 35% and growing of our population. And they're consistently shafted, they pay higher tuition, they have struggles when they arrive here, housing is a mess. So I thought, they should probably have some amount of representation on the highest academic body in the land. So what we did is we went and we looked at the University Act, and we determined that there was actually a loophole. I presented that loophole to the president of the university, the president said okay, and we have an international student senator right now, so for the first time in February, we actually fielded 7 student senators, and for the rest of time, UPEI is now guaranteed to have an international student sit on Senate ex officio. Very excited about that. How I'm going to keep going? We're just going to keep going with what we want to do. We're going to talk to international students. I've been talking a lot to our international student senator. I've been talking a lot to our international student representative. And we're just going to keep pushing forward for what international students need. Because, by God, we have work to do.
Hell yeah.
Excellent. Third question. Looking back at your tenure as VP Academic and External Affairs for the UPEI Student Union, what do you consider your most significant accomplishment, and what lessons have you learned that you will carry forward into your potential new role?
So, there's a million accomplishments I'm proud of. I try not to brag too much, but I'm going to do so now. The thing that I think I'm most proud of is both the initiatives I led with OpenSU, where the council reports, executive reports are all going online every time that we have a council meeting. Additionally, you can go online to my page or the UPEISU website and see literally every day from then till the first time that these council meetings were posted on the website. So if you want to know what I've done, you are able to see what I've done down to the day, which I think is really important, because if you guys don't trust us to know what we're doing, how are you going to trust us to get things done? So my point is, I am a man of transparency, and I've been very, very happy I'm able to keep my word on that.
The last question for Noah, and it's directly connected to your previous answer. How would you ensure that academic policies and decisions are transparent and accountable to the student body?
So the major thing that we're doing with that right now is in regards to... That's a great question. I think that it's important that we are as transparent as possible. The problem that we sort of have is A, students don't know anything about the student union, and B, students don't know anything about UPEI. So what I've been doing is actually talking to our VP Academic and Research that I report to on a bi-weekly basis. We go and we talk and we have a really nice conversation about what student needs are. And one of my crowning achievements was getting him to show up at new student orientation. So that way students could know what the hell their administration looks like. I'm going to try to continue with that because you guys deserve to know who's making decisions at UPEI. And this is the moment I'm going to take the opportunity to say, Senate meetings for UPEI are open to students. If you want to go and see what's happening, please show up to Senate meetings. I will start repassing them over and over on my page, and we'll get them reposted on the Student Meetings Instagram as well.
Thank you so much, Noah. Now we're going to take questions from the audience. Eric?
I know. I just want to say I'm really proud of you and all the things you've done last year. I think you did a really great job. But I also want to touch on what you will continue doing next year, and I want to have your opinion on how important it is for people to who are in the student union continue to be in the student union for longer terms, so they can continue the work that they've done from previous years. Do you think it's important? Do you think it's do you think it's hard for presidents, any kind of executive, to get their priorities done within a year, or do you think they need more time to get that done?
I think the really fast transition period is kind of a mess. I think that we have students come in there and it takes a while to get them trained, takes a while to get them gassed up into what the SU is, and then they're like, oh God, I have 6 months left, what am I gonna do? And I can tell you as a person who's been here for almost 2 years, I still have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just doing the best I can. And I'm very lucky and very grateful that I'm getting wins. We are actually getting things done. But I think that, yeah, I will definitely encourage people to continue to run because we really do need a more long-term plan for the student union instead of the kind of scattershot we have now.
Thank you, Noah. Any more questions from the audience? All right. Thank you so much, Noah. Now we will move on to Vice President External Debates. Vice President External candidates, come to the stage. I know you're a little bit tight on time, so we will just try to move on with it as fast as possible. Okay, yeah, we'll just start from introduction.
Hello everyone, my name is Shira. I'm an international business major with a minor in computer science. I am the co-founding president of the current Black Students Association, and I'm very happy to be here tonight as a compete for UPEI.
Hi everyone, my name is Trish Alkawal and I'm running for DBA External. A little bit about myself, I'm from Tanzania, but ethnically I'm from India, so there's like a good mix of diversity over there. About how I've been involved in campus, I'm very passionate about community engagement, community development. So I've been involved with the Campus Life program for about a year now, and I've also been the lead of this program, so I'm managing our team of 16 Campus Life advisors with my fellow colleague Noah Stryker over here. And besides that, I've been working with the SU as well, so this is my second year now on the Student Union. For context, this is my second year in university, so my entire time I have been involved in the Student Union, and within a month of getting here actually, in October of 2022, I joined UPEI's Board of Governors. That has had a major impact on who I am and how I perceive this university, especially because I've been part of a lot of important discussions like the strike and the Rubin Thompson report. And I'm very excited to be sharing my thoughts here with you today.
Thank you. Would you like to continue with the debate standing, and we will like to sit down? How about Okay, so first question, I'm sure you'll be the first one to answer. What experience do you have in representing a large group or organization to external parties?
So although most of my work for the Black Students Association is done internally, a lot of it requires me to work with external organizations. So the most recent external organization that I've done to work with is the Black Cultural Society. The reason I ended up partnering with them and doing the majority of the Black students in the Black History Month celebrations is because the student unions planning and the student unions organizing this year for Black History Month wasn't necessarily done, and it wasn't satisfactory either. So they gave me a call and they said, hey, this is something that's really, really important. We need you to take it on. And even though it was something that I wasn't necessarily prepared for, I think even if I stumble, even if I fall, even if I'm not necessarily prepared to take on some type of project, I I'd be very happy to still do it if it means
15 seconds.
the betterment of our student body.
Could you repeat the question so I'm sure I'm answering it correctly?
What experience do you have in representing a large group organization to external parties?
Thanks. So, as context, it's been about 9 years now that I've been involved with Modeling UN, and although that's not exactly pertaining to your question, you'll see where I'm going with this. So, as part of Modeling the United Nations, a lot of what you do is you represent ideas and views that are not your own. So, for example, recently when I participated in UPEI's second annual Modeling UN conference, I represented South Africa and the United States of America. Some of these views did not align with my own, but I still did my best to represent them, and at the end of the day, I am representing this country, even though I've never been to that country, for example. And on a different note, again, going back to campus life, my job as one of the 2 lead CLAs is that I am, the way we split the work is that Noah handles all the day-to-day work, and I handle all the event programming, and that involves collaborating with a lot of external organizations and making sure that everyone internally and externally is on the same page so we can execute these events effectively. Thanks.
Thank you. Next question. How would you build relationships with our community partners, alumni, and other external stakeholders? Shrish?
Thanks. That's actually a beautiful question, and in one of my recent posts, I think I addressed something similar to that. So if you're not familiar with the OpenSU initiative, it was launched, I think, in 2018 by by our ex-VPACs. And this initiative is essentially to increase accountability and transparency of all the executives and the counselors on the student union. So one of the initiatives that I plan to launch is that if elected, when I'm going out and talking to all these people in government, like municipal, federal, provincial, I think something that I want to encourage is for all of them to look on our website and look at and read these reports, not just the executive reports, but also to see what all the other counselors are doing. Because if we have a bi-weekly update, then that not only builds our own credibility, but also makes sure that they know that we're actually here as a real organization and we have people that are willing to work to create change. And I think that goes a long way to establish our credibility and making sure that we get the work done.
How would you build relationships with our community partners, alumni, and other external stakeholders?
The way that I would increase relations is by outreach. So this would be outreach internally and it would be outreach externally. So on PEI, there's a number of directories that kind of list and show you the amount of people or the amount of organizations on PEI that are open to and do sort of social justice work. So within our student body, we have a number of clubs that do a lot of different things and they connect with a lot of different organizations within PEI. So I would connect with clubs, I would ask them, who is it that you work with? Who is it that you are championing the needs for? And I would try to work with clubs internally first, hear what the student body needs, and then I would reach out to external organizations and groups, senators, different representatives. I would try to have meetings with them. And then also something that I posted recently is a town hall discussion. That's something that I want to initiate. And having semesterly panel discussions in order to hear from students so that I know when I go out, I know what kind of causes that I'm supposed to be championing.
Thank you. Last question. How do you plan on advocating for student interest at the local, municipal, state, provincial, or national, federal level?
So advocacy is a very big part of my campaign, and advocacy is a very big part of what I do. So to give a little bit more of a preface of my track record, I'm not just the co-founding president of the Black Students Association, I've also worked as a resident life advisor, and I've also worked as a club events coordinator. In my time in student involvement, I've seen a lot of different issues that students have had to face. I've come across a lot of different tough situations that require very tough conversations. And I think even though tough conversations are hard to have, I think conflict is an inherent part of life. I think it's something that we have to be able to confront. I think it's something you have to be able to overcome. And so I think in everything that I've done up until now, I think it's always been in the better interest of the people around me. It's been in the better interest of my community. And so I would use all the skills and all the tools and everything that I've learned and gained in my journey thus far and helping me push forward for the needs that are present.
How do you plan on advocating for student interest at the local, municipal, state, provincial, or national federal level?
First, keyword, student interest. I think the best way to go about this is obviously establishing what are student interests, and I think Divya mentioned the priority survey, which goes out, I think, later this month, and that's what shapes how I advocate at the municipal, provincial, and federal stage. I want to touch more about federal at the moment because that does sound a bit far-fetched and very ambiguous. It's like, oh, you're just a student, how are you going to advocate at the federal level? So I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with this, but I have been making a lot of content online and releasing it on TikTok and Instagram. And one of these videos we talked about CASA, and there's also a dedicated post that describes what CASA is. So CASA is the Canadian Alliance of Student Associations, and after a successful referendum in, I think, fall of 2007, the UPEISU joined CASA in 2008, and we have been proud members ever since, and a big part of what we do with CASA is lobbying to the federal government, being trained by people at CASA, and going and talking to ministers and people at the federal government, which actually goes a lot further than many people realize.
Thank you. We'll move on to the second round, campaign specific questions. So Shura, you've mentioned rising tuition costs as one of the key issues you intend to address. What specific strategies or plans do you have to tackle this problem?
So I'm very excited for this question. Very specifically because the way that I'm currently funding my education, so just to let you know, I'm from Bahamas and I'm an international student. And my tuition is currently being paid for by scholarships, grants, and my mother, who is purely paying my tuition by herself. Scholarships and grants, I think, are the most realistic way, or trying to raise these honorariums to students is the most realistic way that we can try to offset the rising tuition cost that's inevitably going to come. I know that there was a 2% cap that was raised on, or that was placed on students in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick and in different territories, but the unfortunate part about this is that this subsequently came with a 9% minimum raise for international students. Since we're seeing a cap on the amount of international student visas that are going to be permitted in Canada, it's assumed that we're going to see a rise in these tuition fees. So what I would do is I would try to maintain the amount of funding our university is getting. I would try to raise the amount of funding that's allocated towards scholarships, and I would also try to reach out to the student body to see what other ways that we can make innovative solutions happen.
Your campaign questions. Second question. Food insecurity is a serious problem on many campuses, and according to your campaign, you are planning to address it. What measures are you planning to implement to ensure that all students have access to affordable, nutritious food?
So, so food security. Obviously, you need nutritious food in order to be able to survive and get through your studies. Now, I've lived my entire university experience on RIS, and I've lived my entire university experience with having the dining hall, but a majority of my friends and the majority of the people that I represent do not live on campus or do not have that kind of guaranteed food cost. Now, when you have rising food costs and when you have a very scarce amount of resources allocated towards food, it becomes very, very difficult for us to kind of branch out, for us to kind of reach out and make sure that everybody's getting the food that they need. But I know that we have our chaplaincy center, which brings in a considerable amount of donations. But I think the best way for us to go about increasing food security is lobbying legislation. This comes from a result of talking to students.
15 seconds.
And then also being able to have community fridges, being able to reach out to students and ask them, what is your food insecurity kind of looking like? What do you think is an equitable plan in order to ensure that students that need this kind of support are getting it? Because equal solutions don't necessarily target people who specifically have these problems.
Thank you. And the last question is, transparency and inclusivity are central to your campaign. How will you ensure these values are upheld if the UPI student union if you're elected?
So transparency and inclusivity. So the things with transparency is even if I'm not transparent or I decide that I want to hide something from the student body, it's too systemic in order for me to actually do that. So even if I'm not being forthcoming with something that's happening in the SU, because you're students, you're ultimately going to be basing it trickling down. So even if there's something that is affecting students that I'm not necessarily being outspoken on, it's not necessarily something that I can hide. So transparency is just a matter of being able to be forthcoming about our shortcomings in the SU and being able to tell students what it is that we're working on, how is it we plan to tackle it, and what we think the best outcome might be for the majority of students. On the terms of inclusivity, like I said, I've had to work with a number of different students from a number of different backgrounds. When I was a residence life advisor, we had a
15
number of
seconds.
students come in and they would not have secured housing, and so I kind of worked with Red to create emergency housing so that when students come in and they are not secure, we make sure that every UPI student has somewhere to go.
Shreesh, any questions you have for Shura?
I do. What was the second question, or the second last question?
Food insecurity is a serious problem on many campuses, and according to your committee, you're planning to address it. What measures are you planning to implement to ensure that all students have access to affordable and nutritious food?
I'm just going to pose the exact same question back to you because I don't think I heard an actual response. I just heard why food insecurity is important. And while I do appreciate that response, I want to know if there's any actionable steps that you've thought of about food insecurity.
Okay, so to be more specific or to be able to address this question more clearly. So since I do not have the immediate problem of food security, because like I said, I've lived on rice for the majority of my student life, this is an issue that is outside of my mind frame. That's why, since I'm somebody that wants to work on a team, this is something that I can reach out to the partners that I work with in order to be able to get an actionable plan for.
10 seconds.
So since this is something that I've not personally been affected by, it's not necessarily in my purview to be able to say, hey, this is something that I have the most understanding of, but it's something that I know isn't a necessary step. So it's student outreach, it's getting that
Your
feedback,
time is
it's
up.
working with my teammates, and then getting actionable plans for students.
Thank you. Okay, now we're moving to campaign questions for Shreesh. Your proposal to limit tuition increases is commendable. How do you plan to negotiate with the provincial government to index tuition increases to a weighted average cost of living?
Perfect, thank you so much. First, I'm going to touch on what my colleague here said about 2% and the 9% increase in Nova Scotia. That's wonderful, and I actually do have a post about this with those exact same figures from those exact same provinces. So it has my plan to regulate tuition is to do so in such a way where it's indexed to your cost of living. So for example, if inflation for the past 3 years was 3%, then the maximum tuition increase for the next year should be 3%. And while I do recognize that this was accompanied with a minimum 9% tuition increase in Nova Scotia for most international students, that is the second part of my platform priority. So if you read my platform priority, there's 2 sections to it. And in the first section, I talk about what I want to do, and this is what I explained. In the second section, I do say that besides working with just the province, I also want to work with the university in the sense that that domestic and international students face proportionate increases, and not one group faces more financial hardship than the other. I recognize I didn't fully answer your question, but I think we can get back to that once I have time again.
Thank you. Second question. In terms of fostering truth and reconciliation, you've mentioned tailored support programs for Indigenous students. Could you elaborate on what these programs might look like and how they would address academic, cultural, and individual needs?
Of course, that's a lovely question. So obviously, working with Akiris, with the most recent faculty would be the first step, especially because as an international student, well, most of my experience with Indigenous studies has been after I moved here, so I will admit that I'm not as familiar as I should be. But so obviously the first step would be working with the faculty. For example, I've spoken to Dr. Gary Evans, who was the former interim dean, about just learning more. What do you teach in your courses? Why is this so important, and how can I have an impact on this? And that's the first step, obviously. And then the second step ties back into transparency inclusion overall, where it's ensuring that everyone's voices are heard and represented at every step of the decision-making
15
process.
seconds.
So I want to work with the marketing communications manager. I think she's right there, Lena. I want to work with her and push for more progressive and more strong campaigns which gather more input than we have in the past. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions you have so far? Sure. No, if you have questions for Shreesh, you can raise your hand and ask it at any time. Okay, last question. Housing is a significant issue for many students. Can you elaborate on your strategic plan for lobbying representatives at various levels of government to push for dedicated student housing units?
Of course. First, as I talked earlier about it, CASA, that's the biggest advocacy platform that we do have, and I'm very proud that we are members of this. And for some context, if elected, the VP External serves as the primary delegate to CASA. So most of the communication between UPI, Student Union, and CASA will be through either me or Shura, depending who gets elected. And in terms of specific actions that I want to take, I think I want to encourage all of you to look at the policy document on the SU's website. It's at the bottom of the advocacy page. It's a 100-page document, and at the very end, most of my talking points, that's where it comes from, because there's no point in me jumping to new initiatives. If something has worked, we have worked in something in the past, we didn't get the results that we wanted, we should continue working on that, because that creates consistency with government as well. And I want to use those exact same things listed in that document to continue pushing the government and be like, yes, we tried this 2 years ago, I'm back again, we're going to do it again, because it's the same priority. If you couldn't find the money then, we can figure something out right now.
Thank you. Now we'll be taking questions from the audience.
Hi guys, this is a question for both of you. So a big part of advocacy is going to conferences and going to our capital, Ottawa, to advocate to people in government and to people in these organizations. So there are a bunch of conferences and advocacy meetings throughout the year. So right now the student budget, the total for that is $16,000. And you've both talked a lot about, students have problem accessing food and accessing housing. So with that $16,000 dedicated for conferences and advocacy, do you plan on increasing that budget to do more, or potentially diversifying that budget to accommodate food and housing? Or how do you see the best combination of that?
Anyone would like to answer that question first? Yeah.
So that was one of my concerns when I was considering the possibility of going in office. I didn't want to go to a number of conferences that just more or less were a facade election. They didn't necessarily actually serve the student body, but I want to clarify the necessity of these conferences. So us joining CASA or the Canadian Student Alliance was as a result of us being able to get a representation when it comes to Senate or municipal or federal or national conversations. So this isn't us just going in and just having sort of these empty conversations. This is how we get advice from different student unions. This is how we talk to senators. This is how we talk to legislators. This is how we reach out to other people so that we can get these grants and funding to bring them back to UPEI.
Thank you.
Before I begin, for some context, the SU does operate on close to $1 million budget, correct me if I'm wrong. So 16,000 is a very insignificant amount of the overall budget, and there's dedicated funding channels for a number of different things, so I don't think it'd be fair to take money away from this to direct it towards housing and tuition, especially because 16,000 is a very insignificant number when you're looking at a student body for over 5,000 people. And while I wouldn't want to increase this budget, I would want to let you know that we only travel to Ottawa 4 times as VP External. And most of the other meetings and conferences that take place online for CASA. So we're constantly engaged with them, we're just not traveling there all the time.
Thank you. Any more questions from the audience? Thank you so much, candidates. Yeah, of course.
About food security, and I just want to explain why that isn't in the... Sounds good. I just want to explain why that wasn't in my platform priority. So the student union is already working on other measures and conglomerated food bank, and I can't really get much into details about that right now. But in my perspective, for the next year, the actions that are going to be taken wouldn't fall under my portfolio, so it's not fair for me to campaign with something I'm not going to work on. That's all. Thank you so much.
So to clarify, I don't know if there was some confusion between my portfolio and some other candidates, but food security was also not a champion cause, but because it was presented to me, I wanted to be able to answer this question honestly and truthfully, and I did not want to make empty promises to the student body that I cannot fulfill. Because it's necessary, because it's important to you, and it's important to your well-being, I want to be able to work on it, I want to be able to do it. In terms of the conversation about student cost rising as well, I don't know how feasible it is for us to make a proportionate change to the inflation that's going on for domestic and international students. We're already losing millions of dollars, and there's funding cut to the UPI international student offices. But I just want to say, if we're losing funding for international students now, if they don't feel represented, we'll lose even further.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates for VP External. We don't have any questions from the audience, so thank you so much for being here. We're coming to the last round of the debate. I'm gonna ask Vice President's student life candidates to come on stage. Yeah. Are we only going to have to? Do we have two other? We have two candidates that are not able to be present today. It's Erica and Edwait. Edwait, yes, Erica and Edwait. So we'll have Hadika and DT on stage, and they're going to present themselves.
Hi, my name is Hadika. Thank you for joining us tonight. I am a second-year business student, and as of now, I am a campus life advisor and a supervisor at the dining hall. And I've been a supervisor for almost a year now, and even before I got here, I signed up to be a campus life advisor. I really wanted to be more involved in the community, and now as I run for VPSL, I want to take it a step further and work towards engaging our community and supporting our clubs and societies. That's all.
Thank you. DT?
Thank you. Hello, my name is PT, but some of you may call me Nini, and that's completely fine. So currently, I am the Clubs and Events Coordinator at the Student Union. I'm also a campus life advisor. So I have gained a lot of experience working in this role, and it was actually my higher authorities that suggested that I run for BPSL next year, because this experience that I've gained will be very useful for me to better serve clubs, which is one of my main priorities right now, and also to engage the student life at the university more. Oh, thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. Would you like to take a seat, or would you like to continue the debate for standing? Yes, sure. We'll start the first round of the general questions. The first question will answer DT, and then we'll go from there. Can you tell us about any experience you have in planning and organizing student events?
Thank you for that question. So, to explain the organization, as the Clubs and Events Coordinator, I've worked under the current VPSL. So we work with events that happens to engage the student life, as well as events catered specifically to clubs, and these are called the Club events. And I have essentially organized all of the Club events that have happened in this academic year, including the Halloween fashion show that happened over Instagram, as well as the Nerd Arcade that happened pretty recently in collaboration with the Campus Life.
15 seconds.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Do you need to repeat the question?
Yes.
Can you tell us about any experience you have in planning and organizing student events?
Of course. Last semester, I collaborated with one of my other one of the other campus life advisors, and we had a Latin movie night and cookie decorating. So that had a great turnout. And I'm really thankful for having these experiences to have an understanding of how to carry out successful events, how to reach students. And next week as well, we'll be having another event by Campus Life, as I am a Campus Life advisor. We're having Soup for Soul, which is a collaboration with Student Affairs. So yeah, I'm thankful for those experiences.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies. Next question. What are specific initiatives or programs you propose to enhance student life on campus?
So one of my main things is that I want the student union events to be a reflection of what the student body wants. So how am I going to know what the student body wants without, talking to you guys? So I want to have open hours every week so that students can drop by, give me their suggestions, give me their feedback, any criticism. I think it's essential to have your criticism to move forward. And if you would not like to have that confrontation in person, that's perfectly understandable. I plan to have an anonymous online platform where you can reach out, give your feedback, give your criticism, and I can have an understanding of what you guys want and implement it in my events and activities.
Thank you. Do you need to repeat the question? What are specific initiatives or programs would you propose to enhance student life on campus?
So to just follow up, there are already open hours that every single executive currently has. So I wouldn't consider that as a new initiative and would definitely continue to have that. But apart from that, I already know certain things that the clubs and students want because I've been working closely with them this past year, even though I'm just a first year student. So I will be initiating Panthers Spirit Week in collaboration with sports clubs. I will also be having Human Rights Week. Apart from that, to engage the general student body on campus, I will be initiating a podcast, which will be uploaded on the Student Union website, as well as will be broadcasted in Macmillan Hall every week on the radio. So this is some of the ways I will be engaging the student body more effectively. But apart from that, I also will have an anonymous feedback box, a physical anonymous feedback box present in the concourse of Macmillan Hall.
Thank you. Third question and the last question of the general round. What strategies would you implement to promote mental health and wellness among students?
That is a really good question, actually. So this has been something that has happened in the SU before, having themed Mondays in particular. So I've talked to some of the more religious clubs on campus, and they feel like their interests are not represented in the events that are hosted by the SU. And to throw some more light on that, I will be having themed Mondays that have aspects of cultural indigenous history as well as religious and spirituality. So I will be bringing those Mondays on in collaboration with the clubs that I talked about, so that their interests are also taken into account. Thank you.
What strategies would you implement to promote mental health and wellness among students?
Thank you for that question. That's one of my priorities, having wellness workshops on campus. I feel like the Campus Life Lounge does a very good job of creating a welcoming space for students. So I'd like to collaborate with them and with campus peer support to raise awareness of the resources that we have on campus. And it doesn't have to be too serious because we have had events in the past where like arts and crafts events, plant potting events, I'm interested in carrying out for events along the same line to raise awareness for the campus peer sport that we have, so that students are aware of what they can,
15 seconds.
what they have access to.
Did you have a question?
I want to ask some questions. Sure. Thank you. So I know that mental health Mondays are something that is already happening currently. But to add on to that, I think having it just online on an Instagram account is not enough, and maybe bringing that out in my spiritual Mondays would be more useful to have something more physical, essentially.
Okay, that was more of a statement rather than a question. But okay, now we will move on to second rounds, which are campaign specific. Harika, we have first two questions for you.
Yeah.
First one is, you mentioned that you intend to prioritize students' interests and voices. Can you elaborate on how you plan to ensure all students' perspectives are heard and valued?
So as I mentioned earlier, through the online anonymous platform, that's how I would be gaining their perspectives and understanding what they actually want. But I do understand implementing them is also important. That's why you're actually getting the feedback, and the way they would know that their suggestions are heard is through implementation, through implementing what they're suggesting.
Thank you. With your focus on, you have a question? Yeah.
There are surveys that the SU actually conducts every year that are very similar to the way the anonymous online feedback form that you're talking about. So I was wondering, how would you actually have students know that this is something that exists? Because that is something I've seen as a huge problem that the student body faces.
Thank you for your question. I would use the student union platform. One of the main ways I feel that we reach students is our student union Instagram page. So that's where I would make it aware that we have this system in place now, where you can drop your suggestions and give us your feedback. That would be how it.
Thank you. With your focus on enhancing career prospects, what sort of workshops or events do you envision? How will these initiatives help students explore a career path and connect with professionals?
Thank you for asking. So one of my things is that I would like to have career events, and this would differ from job fairs in a way that it would give students an opportunity to explore various fields, because as students, we're still figuring out what we want. Not everyone has their paths set out in life. We're still in university, we're still understanding what we want to do, so having this would give them an opportunity to explore different fields, and I plan to implement this through a collaboration with the Experiential Education Department.
Thank you. Third question, and the last question of your round, is UPEI currently has 55 active clubs and societies. How do you plan to personally meet with the clubs to understand their plans for the semester and explore potential collaborations as part of your campaign?
Well, first I would see how each club could connect with each other, what's relevant, and I would meet with clubs as groups instead of meeting with each club individually. I would invite the clubs, related clubs as groups, and sit down and see how we could implement events together to make use of resources.
Did see, you mentioned a plan to increase community engagement through a detailed event schedule and weekly podcast. How will you ensure that these initiatives reach all students, including those who may not regularly check their emails or the UPEI Student Union website?
Thank you for the question. Because I'm aware that there are students who do not check the newsletter that is sent to every single student's email ID nor the Student Union website or the Instagram page that often. That is one of the main reasons I decided that having a podcast and a radio station physically in Macmillan Hall played every week, once per week, talking about upcoming events is the way to go. This will ensure that students who have not heard about what the Student Union even does sometimes are still aware of the events that's going on, especially club events. It would also help in engaging and having more club members for the clubs as well.
15
So.
seconds.
Thank you. Can you provide more details on how you plan to encourage merging of clubs with similar objectives? What steps will you take to ensure that the identity and purpose of each club are preserved in the process?
Thank you for the question. So when I say that I will encourage the merging of clubs with similar interests, it does not mean a forceful merging. So it's going to be so that there is less confusion for the current student body. There is, as mentioned before, over 50 clubs, and there are some clubs that have similar names. There are some clubs that have very similar purposes, and for new students that are looking to join clubs, that poses a point of confusion. And since clubs exist too as well, according even the student union, but clubs also exist to engage students, I think it's very important that as the BTSL, I would take that into account and encourage merging, but still not force them. Thank you.
Thank you. The last question we have is the club app mobile application that you're proposing seems like a significant undertaking. Can you elaborate on your plans to collaborate with the VP Finance and local tech companies to build this app? And how are you going to identify inactive clubs?
I will address the second part of the question first. So identifying inactive clubs is fairly easy because we have to look at their Instagram profile and see what events have been going on. We could also check what funding applications they have submitted in collaboration with the clubs and events coordinator or the VP Finance to see if they've had any upcoming events. Which is something that I've also had to do in my current position for the club's banquet. But apart from that, to talk about the first part of the question, so I do understand that this is a very big initiative and it would not be completed in a span of a couple months. I would want everyone to know that if it takes 2 years, then I will continue in my position for the second year to ensure that this is something that starts. The UPI Safe app was done by App Armor, which is an app in Toronto, as well. The Panthers recreation was done Thinking Big IT, that's a local company.
Your time is up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll be taking questions from the audience. I see a question from Shrish.
Just out of curiosity, how will your this book is very annoying. Out of curiosity, how will your weekly podcast differ from one-on-one credits, which is a podcast last year, and we don't do this anymore? I don't remember why exactly, but I don't think we had much engagement. So how will your new podcast deal with those challenges?
Thank you for that. So the podcast that was initiated last year was actually not by the student union, but it was by a group of students. And one of the reasons that they weren't able to get a lot of reach was because it was just online. And as I mentioned before, The podcast will be uploaded on the SU website, but it will also be broadcasted in Macmillan Hall every single week over a radio station. So it's hard to miss.
Thank you. More questions from the audience? Eric?
Hello. I am curious how you guys feel about the importance of alcohol is in student life. Repeatedly, we see some of the most populated events that the student union hosts is the Wet Rise, and even for clubs, some of their most populated events is their pub crawls. Will you guys consider having more alcohol-associated events and increasing student life alcohol, or no?
Do we have a candidate who wants to answer that question first?
The SU hosts a lot of events. The wet and dries are the events that seems to engage a larger population, simply because that is the interest of the student body. As for clubs, we do not tell clubs what events they want to host. We only support them. So if they want to host events with alcohol, then we have them fill out the risk management form and have the entire process done. But that is completely up to them. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would keep the events that we have, the wet and dries. I think that we haven't had that many successful events with the Fox and Crow parties. So except for, I think the Taylor Swift week was great, but I'd explore on what other themes we could do for those events. Explore suggestions by students that we could implement for Fox and Crow parties.
Thank you. Okay, any more questions? Yes.
I have a question for all candidates. And you guys said she's going to give out a day where they're going to do anonymous and let people will come to talk to her. And DT talked about the podcast. How would you guys also juggle that with your student life? Because you're still students, you still have things or workload on your own. How are you going to juggle it without having a mental breakdown or anything like that?
So as of now, I do have a lot of spare time. I'm a second year business student. I only have classes on 2 days. I'm working as a supervisor at the dining hall while also volunteering as a campus life advisor. So when I would get the position of BPSL, I wouldn't be a supervisor. I'd resign from my position over there and designate all my time and energy to the position of the BPSL.
Thank you for your answer.
Currently, I am the club development manager as well as the campus life advisor, and my major is computer science. And honestly, it is very important to take care of keeping account mental health of executives, because work can sometimes become a lot. But that is a very personal question, and I think I have taken that into account. And I will not be doing my current 2 jobs and instead be only working as the BPSL next year if I get my position. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions?
As a representative of 7 different clubs, one of the biggest problems that we've been facing is funding for clubs. The clubs come to the SU mainly for the issue of funding. And this is probably a question for the VP Finance, but since that's not an elected position, I have to ask the closest person to the clubs, who represent the clubs. How are we going to try to increase the funding that is given to clubs while also decreasing the number of inactive clubs? Because we're also seeing a surge of the number of clubs that are present on campus every year. How are we going to satisfy this quota for the clubs?
I didn't see who raised this first.
I'm very glad you asked that question. Unfortunately, I do know the VPSL is not on the funding committee, but we can work around that by having a funding request workshop to understand how you can break down your costs and effectively request for club funding, as well as having fundraising workshops to brainstorm to brainstorm what to do, and a 2-day fundraising fair for clubs and societies as a mutual benefit to reach students and also gain funds.
Thank you.
The VP Finance actually hosts the funding committee, so he does chair it. So basically, I will be initiating a grant-based system. So every executive gets an initiative of $1,000, and we can decide to use that however we want. And I will say, recognizing that there's been an increase in the number of clubs, and the increase in the amount of funding allocated has been comparatively slow. I will be using that initiative for granting funds based on diversity, inclusivity, as well as eco-friendliness.
I have a question for DT.
Do you mean that the executive of every club would be granted $1,000? Can you just explain on that?
If I get elected as VPSL, then me as an executive and the student union gets an initiative of $1,000, and we get to decide how we want to spend that. And my initiative would be to increase the club's funding by initiating a grant-based system. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions from the audience?
Hi, Hadika, I have a question for you. Earlier you had mentioned that you'll be, your initiative is to bring Kenya events. And my question is, experiential education they do already host job fairs, and more than just job fairs, they do have field services. I would like to know how your initiative is going to pull in.
Were you able to hear the question?
Yes. So, much like most of our events, it would be an opportunity to raise awareness. Thanks for bringing that up. To raise awareness for the counseling services that we have by experiential education. And another thing I'd like to add, having all those, having that event and having professionals from different fields at one place at a certain time would help students explore the different opportunities in the moment. I feel like it gives a different perspective rather than counseling.
Thank you. My tree really wants to ask. There is another person here. You haven't asked a question yet. No? Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay, I have a couple questions. First, this both is actually get on. Okay. Okay, I'll ask the question specifically instead of asking both of you the other question. You spoke about monitoring inactive clubs and stuff like that. And one of the main things you cited was Instagram, and if they're not really posting events on Instagram. I'm the president of the Philosophy Society, and we don't have Instagram, but we have a very active Discord community. And as far as I'm aware, no one from the SU, like none of the executives except one of our members from before he was an executive is in the Discord. So how exactly do you plan on monitoring the activity of clubs when they're not exactly on Instagram or any of the other social media sites that you referenced?
I believe that even if the Philosophy Society doesn't have an Instagram, they have an email. And for those clubs that don't have an Instagram, it's very easy to just reach out by email. Regardless, I will be having 15 minutes meeting with every club. And that just talk about their interests and what they would like to see, and how to best serve them. So that is something that will be talked about there as well. I also talk about how the other way is also by looking at the funding applications. But again, I understand that you still don't have your needs for funding. But
Thank you. We'll do the last question. Thank you. Okay. Well, I'll go with Atik because he had another question.
Can you guys suggest at least one event that fosters on club collaboration in which we are able to raise money for all the clubs and we're able to fundraise for that? An event that hasn't been done before in India.
So although we have had fundraisers in the past, I don't believe we've had a collective fundraiser with all clubs and societies. So that's one of my main things, having a 2-day fundraiser for clubs and societies where students would be able to reach out to clubs and societies, have a second opportunity to do that other than the fair that happens at the start of each semester. And clubs and societies would also be able to have a chance to fundraise as the students from different communities would be coming to support their clubs.
there are some clubs that are very good at fundraising and others that struggle. Hence, I would be having fundraising workshops that would have the executives of those clubs that are doing well to volunteer and give tips. It would be something for the clubs, by the clubs. But yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, candidates. This will wrap up our last round. We appreciate you giving us the time. As the last closing remark, I just wanted to tell thank you so much for all the attendees and candidates who took the time actually sat through it all. I hope it gave you a chance to learn more about your candidates and people that you are going to vote for and going to represent you next year. Yeah, if you don't know, you vote on March 12th and March 13th on the Student Union website. March 12th and March 13th, guys. Thank you. Oh my God. Sorry guys, I forgot to mention, we do have some issues of the latest issues of the cadre for you. So you're familiar who has moderated your events, and you can also volunteer with us or we also give away money and other cool stuff. So please take an issue from State over there. Yeah, maybe you'll learn something new about your community. Thank you.